replay, you can join us live. It's okay. I promise. You just got to reach out to one of us so we can get you the link in the proper time. Because I know I always say it's at 1:30 Central because that's the time zone I'm in. So, but this is that time. And this is a great opportunity to talk all things leadership in life, life and leadership. It's in our families, it's in our organizations, it's in our neighborhoods, it's in our churches, wherever, business. Yes, we do talk business. We talk management principles, all those things that make a true leader. And one of our main guiding principles in this is that as a true leader, when you're true to yourself, you can be true to others. And that gets other people to want to follow you and want to do greater and better things in their own right. And that's a huge piece of why we're here each and every Monday, minus a few holidays and some extenuating circumstances. That's why we love doing what we do. And we learn from each other. You heard a long time ago, leaders are learners. And so this week, we are finishing up the main category of leaders are skilled. Everything we've talked about for these last couple months has been skills that really are a must-have. It doesn't mean you're perfect at it. By all means, I know I'm not perfect. However, it is things that if you're great at it, start teaching others. If you're lacking in it, start learning it. Start learning from those who are great at it. Either way, always be looking to improve. And one of the things to really think about if you're struggling and putting that together or saying, I don't need to do that, doesn't really matter, you're wrong. Because today's topic is leaders are responsible. Now, keep in mind, in responsible, this will be a long chapter in the book when I write it, because it's going to include other words that come with responsible. Kind of like last week, we talked about leaders are warriors. There was other things we could bring to be a part of the piece of puzzle in this. And this one specifically, even though responsible will be our main topic today, is integrous. Leaders are integrous. They have integrity. They say they're going to do it, they do it, and they do it right. And if they mess up, they own it, they admit it, they'll fix it. Also looking at the fact that being reliable. You know, if we're going to be doing those things, then we've got to look at the fact, are we on time? Are we doing this? We talked some about this last week. And are they accountable? But having the integrity and being responsible for the very things that we do and that we hold ourselves to is going to be why people follow us. And so, yes, integrous and responsible have been interchangeable in having that integrity. And so, guys, yes, we talked about a lot of this last week. I meant 2 weeks ago when I said warriors. We talked a lot of this last week, and we all agreed that this is kind of an ever-expanding point here. And so I wanted to spend a little more time on it as we close out this skilled theme before we kick off next week, where we talk about leaders or winners. Because it's going to be because of these very things, being responsible as communicators, listeners, receivers, trainers, developers, so on and so forth, being reliable in those things that really brings our skills to the forefront. And so kind of coming back a little bit from last week, guys, and Jim, I had you titled Leaders Responsible again because I decided that all of this could really stay together in one area. So who knows where we'll go when I write the book. But coming back to our topic from last week, guys, and talking about having integrity and being responsible, being reliable, being accountable, when we think back to these past topics of, you know, being learners, being readers, being rational, being the very people we say we are, we have a responsibility to do the very thing we say we're going to do. So, Jim, what does that mean to you when you hear people, this is a Givers University principles, do number one, do the thing to get the thing. I'm responsible to you guys to do that as well as you are to me if we're say we're going to do it. So people holding themselves to their word, Jim, what does that mean to you?
Well, I think what it means to me is we do have a responsibility just by definition of what it is. And, you know, the whole thing is holding to your word. Is that the specific question about that
Yes.
specific
Holding,
part?
be responsible to be held to your
Well,
word.
well, it's really important because people need to understand it's not about how important it is to you when you make a commitment to somebody, when you give your word on something. It's how important it is to the other person. And you may not understand how important it is. I might say, hey, Mike, yeah, I'll be there. You know, we all do that casually, right? Mike invites me somewhere. Hey, yeah, I'll be there. I'll be online or I'll be at an event. And I don't know what that means for Mike, to be honest. You know, all I know is I gave him my word. It doesn't matter if it's because he just wants to see me. It doesn't matter if he has 100 people there. It's just the fact that I gave him my word. And on the, the 4 agreements, you know, it talks about being impeccable with your word. Because, you know, let's say if I don't show up here If I'm random, we agree we're on. We're going to be here by 11:30. If I'm not on, that could have an impact on here. Chris, if you're not on it, will definitely have an impact on it because you narrate it. It doesn't matter if it had no implication to us, meaning, oh, we were free anyway. We do carve out our time. But what does matter is that you can stay with your word, because I believe how you do some things is how you do everything. And I've taught this principle to, several hundreds of people in different formats. But the whole idea is the fact that, being responsible with your word is everything, because it doesn't matter how important or unimportant you think it is. The fact is that you gave your word and you don't know what it means by giving your word, what that implication is. And so very important. And just being impeccable with your word. And I want to add one thing. A solution is, I say, when we have an agreement, I think responsibilities are based on certain implied agreements. Then you can reset the agreement. Hey, if I'm running late, I give this little caveat, and you can look at, hey, if somebody's consistently late or what's going on. But in general, I think I have a responsibility, if at all possible, to let you know before our agreement is, hey, before 11:30, I should call you, not after your meeting, if at all possible. All right. There are extenuating circumstances. So anyway, very important. It means that, pretty much, your character's online every time you break your word. So those are my thoughts.
Jim, so well said. Gosh, I was sitting here thinking, man, I got about 18 different ways I could go with that and have another 5 hours discussion on this, which is why I decided to combine all this together, even though and I'll own it, I sent the wrong theme to these guys before we are going to kick off because I read my notes wrong. And that happens. That happens. And my word is that I will own the things that I do wrong or may mislead or should have asked first or needed guidance on but didn't take it, or there is some adages out there that any decision is better than no decision, even if it's the wrong one. The thing is, you have to take the responsibility as a leader to say, I own that decision. As an officer, I'd have drivers, and I'd have young drivers, I'd have rookies, I was working with. And I'd tell them, listen, if I tell you to do something, we're going to hold true to it. Now, if you have a question, ask me. That's fine. But I will take the responsibility. If I say it and we need to get it done, I will take the responsibility if something comes from it. That's a part of being a leader. And so, Mike, what does that mean to you when you give that word and say, I think Jim really covered the give and keep your word section very well. So let's say something goes awry or something goes wrong. As a leader, it's your responsibility to own up to it. Mm-hmm. What does that mean to you?
It's interesting. So we started talking today, and I was just like racking my brain at this stage of the game. I've done a lot of my own podcasts, and I had to go all the way back, even though I recall this like yesterday, to episode 22 on the True Man podcast, where we did a show called Are You a Man of Your Word? And I really had to laugh about that. It was almost 2 years ago, for goodness sakes. Wow, I've come a long way. But, it is a character thing, and you will never build trust with the people around you if you are not a person of your word. It's impossible. Can't be done. I mean, if you show up every time and as a fake or a fraud, or you do something that is not authentic or trustworthy, I mean, you're just not going to have a lot of friends. You're not going to have a lot of friends. And so being reliable is a big, big deal. And in fact, in the business world, from what I'm seeing these days, if you're reliable, you're ahead of probably 75 to 80% of the people that are in the marketplace. And I hate to say that. I absolutely hate to say that. But it is a matter of your reputation. Your reputation will follow you around, and people won't want to be around you if you're not responsible and a reliable person. And that's just the way it is.
Yeah, as you were saying that, it reminded me of an old quote that I have since replaced thanks to another podcast that I'd listened to, and I want to give them credit. It was Dan Long with Joel Marion, and Dan actually said it was on the podcast called Born to Impact. And Mike, I think this really speaks to why that number is so bad. 75 to 80% is so bad, not because it's a bad thing. It's a bad thing, period. As much as why is that number so big? For so long and in so many ways, we were taught this phrase: fake it
Yeah.
till you make it. Well, here's the problem to that. The more you fake it, the more you're going to get found out. And the more you lie about it, the more you try and hide it instead of facing it and fixing it, the more reliability, the more accountability you lose, the more trust you lose. People are going to find out, especially in this day and age. It's way too easy to get connected these days and find out what may or may not be true. We'll leave it at that. Because the internet does tell lies, folks. I tell you, you haven't figured that out yet? It does. But that's just it, though, is I think too often we've had bad examples of good leadership gone wrong, and too many people have stuck with it. I mean, I can't tell you how many times I would ask questions of superiors at old jobs that I had when I was young and up and coming manager in the restaurant industry or in other areas. Like, well, just fake it till you make it. Why don't I just come out and tell the customer flat out, I don't know, but I'll find out. What's wrong with that? And what that builds, and where I have started to lead myself as more accountable to, is faith it. Faith, F-A-I-T-H, until I make it. Because I can have the faith in the fact that I am now building the right accountability in myself that I also view in others and hold them accountable to as well. If we slip up, or let me rephrase that, when we slip up, own it.
Yeah.
Take the responsibility and own it. Perfectly fine with these. Hey, Chris, that's my bad. I messed up. I'm done with it at that. I mean, maybe we still need to talk about it so we can learn from it or take notes on it or whatever. But at that point, move on. Move on. But this fake it till you make it perspective, especially as a leader, is not good. It's one thing to be learning and admitting that you're learning. It's one thing to make a mistake and admit it. It's another thing to just totally try and write it off and disregard it as if it wasn't important.
Yeah.
And
well, Chris, go ahead. Sorry.
Go ahead, Jim.
I didn't mean to talk over you.
No, you're good. Go.
Okay. Well, one thing I've never liked that expression myself, because I think it implies you're, I understand the implication to it, but, just be transparent. And I've kind of, I think both of you guys know I'm working on a spot dot program. I've told you about that, right, Chris?
Yep.
I've told you about that, Mike. And in my conversations, it's been really great. Is it a spot or dot? I can tell you how much clarity it's given me. If you're a spot, just say, I'm spot. I have all the, and then what it means for you that are listening here, it means you have all the responsibilities, the tools, the possibilities. Like I might say I'm a real estate investor, but if I haven't really done any real estate investing, I am a spot. That's what I'm using, that location, those tools, those courses, a title to get to where I want, but I'm not a dot. A dot is actually doing it and really being an expert, because what you're saying is really, I'm just applying it to this. As a spot, it means I have no practical experience. If I say I'm a real estate investor and you refer somebody to me, Chris, and I've never done it before, I'm not going to be able to get it done, period. I might even mess it up and make it worse than what it is if you refer something to me. You see what I'm saying? Now I'm not saying I won't get it done, but that's different than if I've done 4 or 5 deals before. I really know how to troubleshoot it and how to make things happen. So I think it's really important we present it exactly the way it is, because if I'm relying on you, you say you're a leadership expert because you are through Eagle Fire Enrichment. I've seen your course. I love how you conduct it. I know you can conduct this meeting. If I refer somebody to you and you're not, that might cost me my reputation or relationship with somebody, especially if you screw it over and you really don't know what you're talking about. So it's really important to understand, faking it till you make it. We have a responsibility to be transparent, and we understand riding the fence a little bit. I get it. But what you got to do is make sure when people, especially when people rely on you, they know exactly what you're able to do and not able to do. That's what it comes down to for me. I just had to comment on that, Chris.
No, that's perfect, because that's where I was going to head with what I'm going to conclude with here on this part of it. And then, Mike, I want to hear your thoughts. Jim, I want to reframe just a little bit in that of, if I say I'm going to stick with the real estate example. I can say I'm a real estate investor. You know how? Because I bought this house. That's investing in
You
real
could.
estate. Is it not? It is.
Yep.
Does it make
Yep.
me an expert in it? Absolutely not.
Nope.
It's something
Nope.
I intend on learning, not something I'm going to put myself as an expert in. Now, that said, though, if I come right out and say, yeah, I'm a real estate investor because I bought this house, but I don't say that because I bought this house, now I may be running the risk of faking it till I make it. And I do run
Correct.
the risk of holding an irresponsible leadership example of telling people the wrong thing and just hoping I figure it out. And I've heard of examples. There are some times where, yeah, there are people admitted, yeah, I was telling people I was doing this and I had a lot to learn and I made a lot of mistakes. And that's why I always say, go find the sources that are out there. I mean, with the virtual reach we have these days, and if you cannot afford a program, go to YouTube. I will tell you, go to YouTube. Go to social media. My Facebook stuff is out there, guaranteed. I know it's out there. I'll tell you, Jack Canfield, known as one of the top leaders. He wrote Chicken Soup for the Soul, top leader, top speaker out there. He said it himself. He goes, there are many people who hear me today cannot afford me as a coach. I was sitting here thinking, I was like, yeah, I'm one of them. And he said, go to YouTube, type in Jack Canfield. You'll find a lot of my stuff. He goes, you may not be able to apply it all because you're not getting the direct coaching from me, but you'll at least start to learn. And Jim, I think that's the key is, are we going to take the responsibility to learn? Leaders are learners. Are we going to take
Great
the
point.
responsibility of saying, I'm becoming, instead of saying I am, say I'm becoming a real estate investor. And I've got a lot to learn. I have some different experts with me. Are you willing to work with me? Be open and honest about it. More people will give you a more straightforward and honest answer. And many of them may be more than willing to work with you, unless it's a pressing issue. Like, no, I got to have the person that can sign the paperwork today. I'll be upfront and honest. I'm not your guy. I'm not the one who can do that. But Mike, how important is it to come right out the gate and say, hey, I'm still learning this, or also to have the responsibility to understand that maybe we don't have all the solutions, because we don't. And someone comes to you and says, hey, I need help with this. You're like, yeah, I do coach within that arena, or I do teach on that, but it's not my number one topic. I've done that several times. And there are a few that they're like, well, we'll have you speak on this. I've had others that said, well, then quite honestly, we got to walk, but do you know anyone? Yes, I do. Here's their card, here's their information, whatever. How much more respect to take that responsibility on, to be accountable to what we do know, what we are capable of, and what we're learning. How much more respectable is it to just come right out the gate and say that, Mike?
Well, I have a tremendous amount of respect for people that would do that. You know, I've been in that position. You know, I mean, you wouldn't go to an auto mechanic if you needed a heart surgeon. You know, and you know, you need to know those things right up front. I think people respect people who up front will say, I mean, have you ever gone into I know, Chris, you worked in a restaurant, you gone into a restaurant and somebody will say, gosh, sorry, I'm a little nervous. It's my first day here. You know, I'll give them a little grace on that, because that's not easy. You know, first of all, one of the biggest fears that people have is public speaking. And so somebody that would automatically put themselves out there is really putting themselves out there. You know, they're exposing themselves. And so I think when people are honest and they say, you know, I have learned, because I was one of these people that didn't want to feel exposed. So if I didn't know the answer to something, I sure as heck wasn't going to tell somebody. I mean, God, why would I do that? You know? And now I'll tell people all the time, I have no problem saying, excuse me, I don't know the answer to that. I need to go back and research that, or I know who has the answer. Let's go get the answer. I think people have a tremendous amount of respect for that. But we also live in this fast food world where everybody thinks that Google has the answer and that each and every one of us can regurgitate something that quickly. And that's not the case. That's not real life. You know, we don't always have the answers. Just own up to the fact that we don't have the answers, and everything will work out. It will.
And what Mike's building upon there is why I had leaders are integrous, but decided to add it to responsibility instead, is Mike has the integrity to hold himself accountable to doing that. And I know Jim does as well. I do myself. I don't know. I will find out. If it's not in my wheelhouse or in my skill set, I will find those who can and gladly refer over. I've had that happen before. It's not the end of the world. And yes, Mike, I've had several people, or hey, we're training such and such. Is it okay if they take your order? Believe it or not, I've seen people say no. Me, I'm like, yeah, come on over.
Yeah.
Just
Your other option is to
what
go
you
sleep
are
at
asking.
Holiday Inn.
Be aware of what you are asking for when you ask me to help you train and learn. Because we're going to have some fun. So that's gentlemen, this has been fun, folks. We are ending just a few minutes early today due to some conflicting scheduling on my end. And I'm beyond grateful as always for this opportunity to speak to everybody. Mike, how can we get a hold of you?
Go to truemanlifecoaching.com. You can always drop me an email at mike@truemanlifecoaching.com. I'd love to hear from you.
Yeah. And go check out his podcast. He made reference to it earlier. I remember episode 22. You're going to love it. When he says, it's been a long time ago. He's got a lot of episodes on there, which means there's a lot of information, a lot to glean from, a lot to gather, and a lot to learn from. So highly recommend checking it out. Speaking of checking things out, if you are in the greater Sacramento area, unless I screwed that up, Jim, if I did, I'm sorry. This guy knows how to do karaoke. And last time I checked, they also added something else. So, Jim, if they're local or if there's other ways to get a hold of you or to see what you're up to, how can they find out?
Yeah, they can go to jimtchong.com, just like how it's spelled. And also you can go to zoomturtle.com just to see the variety of things of what I'm connected with. And I'm going to mention, I appreciate you doing this and running this, Chris. We are specifically in Placer County, which is a different echelon of Sacramento, but we are also in Sacramento. Matter of fact, there is a new, you'll like this, karaoke bar that's opening up, meaning it's not really a bar, it's a full restaurant, 7 locations. I talked to them because they heard about me and they want us to help them probably market it. You know, I might be a consultant there. So the whole thing is that, you know, if you want to know how to really convey a message eloquently, have the visibility, the influence, and the connection, please contact me. I'm really trying and striving to help as many people as I can, you know, really reach that position of prominence, even if it's in their own mind, a legend in their own mind. So with that, you know, make sure you check out on October 28th, the parade at State Capitol. I'll be emceeing that as well. So, hey, I just appreciate everything that you do, Tice, and the parade is in Sacramento, by the way, by the Golden Harvest. It's called the Golden Harvest Parade and Festival. So anyway, back to you, Chris.
Yeah, thanks, Jim. Thanks, Mike. As always, truly appreciate you guys. Truly appreciate everybody that's watching this. We are so grateful for you. Yeah, you can reach out to me, Chris Tice at Eagle Fire and Richmond. Excuse me, Chris Tice. Chris at eaglefirerichmond.com is my email address. Don't add the Tice on there. And we're your leadership solution company. We talk all things leadership, specifically relating to effective communication, training and development, as well as safety and crisis prevention and management. So if you are looking for that or you look for some inspirational speaking, I love coming to speak. I love seeing people lifted up and raised up. And I love seeing them become better leaders, or in our case, true leaders. So thank you all so much for today. Have your best day ever by making every day great. Remember, you can't never did.